And we're live, and I want to say screw daylight saving. So sorry for the poor planning. There was a bit of a mix-up, so I thought that this show was going to start in 45 minutes, but we were 45 minutes early because I didn't expect the change of time to go. So I see that there is still a few of you that are there. Maybe more will come and connect in 45 minutes from now. Once again, sorry for the confusion and very happy to see you here, Alan and Arnaud. Thanks for joining us and being here, even though it was a bit of a mix-up. So today is a bit special. So first of all, hi and welcome to the Homo Ludens show. If you are watching us for the first time, this is a channel on history and board games. Today, I'm equally excited and scared as we are going to start a new series to learn how to play a monument of wargaming called Pacific War. This game was originally released in 1985 and was recently reprinted in an updated version by GMT Games. It is a monumental game, both in the sense that it is physically massive and that I think I never will be genuinely able to play it as a campaign because I don't have a table big enough to play it. But it's also monumental in the sense that it's considered a classic and arguably one of the best games on the Pacific theater. My objective with this series is to entertain you by going through what I expect to be a painful process to learn this monster game. Suffer through it so you don't have to. And when Mark originally suggested that I make a video series about learning this game, I thought that if I wanted to do such a thing, I couldn't do it alone, and I needed someone to be by my side. And I naturally thought about someone that I knew had some pretty heavy X Encounter credentials that has been on the show already once or twice. I don't remember, but already been here. I trusted him and I thought it would be great to do it with him. And I thought about Gary from Ardwulf there. Hey, Gary, thanks for being here.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
It's great. I really appreciate you taking the time and doing this with me. And maybe just to explain, so the idea is that we're going to do that series and hop from one channel to the other. So for that first episode, we'll do it here, and for episode 2, we should do it on Ardwolf's Lair. And of course, we haven't planned for a date because planning is.
Well, imagine how challenging it is to arrange for two people on two different continents to get together at the same time, and schedules, stuff happens and all that. But not only do we have two different continents, but we have the heavens themselves with us today. So,
Yeah, exactly.
presenting additional scheduling difficulties.
I will come back to that later. But first of all, before I bring in our my second guest for today, I wanted to talk to you a bit about your own relationship with Pacific War. So on my side, I'm completely fresh. I've never played it. I tried to read the rules and I felt a bit overwhelmed. I think it was a step up from most of the games that I've played before, even if Mark was telling me that it's not actually as complicated as it seems. So I'm actually curious to get into this, but I was wondering, what's your relationship with this game? I know that you've played it a lot.
A lot is a bit of a stretch, but we've probably put 50 hours into it. So, of course, I was aware back in the 80s and 90s of the Victory Games Pacific War, and it even then had a big reputation as like if for some folks that thought it was the Pacific War game, right? But the folks I gamed with back in the day didn't really do much in the way of Victory games, right? So I never really got a chance to look at it. I never owned it until about 5 years ago. Maybe I picked up a copy of the Victory Games version and I started looking through it. And I'm like, this looks pretty neat. And one of the realizations that you come to is that it's not particularly, I mean, we're already asking questions in the chat about Empire of the Sun, and it's a very different game from Empire of the Sun. You can see lineage, like shared ideas between the two games, but this is fundamentally an operational game as opposed to a strategic game. And that's what actually got me interested in it. Now, of course, rumors were afloat for years about a reprint from Nuts Publishing, and then GMT managed to land it. So once it came out, and it took, which always takes longer than you want it to, but once it came out, it immediately jumped to the line in our actual play queue and became the very next thing that we played. And we played our way through a large number of the battle engagement scenarios, a large number of the battle scenarios and 2 of the campaign scenarios, which I will add. Many of those campaign scenarios, which are really the bones of the game, they are operational exercises, and you can play most of them on that quarter-size mini map that comes with the game. There's an unmounted mini map that covers that sort of Solomon Islands type of area that you could play a lot of the campaigns just on that thing. And when you are playing those campaigns, man, it's a lot to juggle. It really is.
Do you think it's something that we should aim for the series, to go up to a point where we play maybe a campaign scenario?
Possibly. The campaign scenarios are, so there's and Mark can talk to this too, but there are engagement scenarios which are basically one little battle, right? You're not even going through like the whole movement or anything like that. You're there, you fight the battle. The battle scenarios are like one operation. So you plan as part of the campaign this operation, and you put points in here and points over there, and determine where all your task forces are and what they contain and all that stuff. Whereas in the battle scenario, that's just all done for you. And here's your objective. Here's your victory conditions. Here's your one operation that you have to get done in whatever amount of time is allocated to the battle scenario. Whereas in the campaign scenario, you may have a few months, right? And you decide when you're going to launch those operations, the planning of those operations, which is completely essential. If you do not plan them, they will end with your ships on the bottom of the ocean. I guarantee it. Either because they got sunk or because you ran out of time to get them back to port safely, and ran out of points to keep them afloat for long enough. So,
that seems like really interesting and different problems from what I've read that you see in the battle. So that could be an interesting thought. So, but we'll see how it goes. We'll go on and we'll see where it's up. But I think it would be interesting to see if we can get to that point. Even for my own sake, I think I would like to see that part of the game.
I will say that for the benefit of you and for anybody else watching who's trying to learn the game is kind of jump to the next level as soon as you're ready, as soon as you feel you're ready. Don't say, because we did this. We said, we're going to play three more engagement scenarios, and we felt like they kind of overstayed their welcome a little bit, right? Like we were focusing too much on the mechanics of that engagement rather than starting to bring in the additional rules, which is where, and new rules come into play in the battle scenarios, more new rules come into play in the campaign scenarios, and more new rules come into play in the strategic scenarios. Yeah. But jump up to the next level as soon as you think you were ready. Don't take too much time on the engagement or battle scenarios, because in the campaign scenarios are really where it's at.
And that's a great tip. But as I said earlier, it won't just be Gary and I for this series to learn Pacific War. We're also super glad to have also with us the designer, or maybe we should say in that case the architect behind this game. So we have with us Mark Herman. Hey, Mark, how are you doing?
Hi, everybody. Good to see you all.
Great, but thanks for taking the time, and thanks for being here again. Maybe I have a first question for you. So this game was originally released in 1985. So the game is actually as old as I am, exactly. So I was quite surprised. So I was wondering, what do you think changed in the wargaming scene and design scene overall since now and then? And do you think that a game like this could be published today?
Well, the answer is it was published today. So
yes, that's true. Yeah,
I guess that's
from scratch.
A rhetorical question. This was an interesting personal journey for me. So in 1985, I would be 31 years old. Okay, just to put it in perspective. I was born in 1954, and I was 31. And the experience I had with the original game was, this was the, I was the head of Victory Games, and we were doing, this was sort of the, SPI version 2.0, whatever you want to call it. And I set out to design a very, I thought, detailed operational game on the Pacific. And then before I knew it, I was, I had done so many different campaigns. I realized I had done all of the pieces of the war. And of course, I always felt that, people were going to always ask for the war itself. And so the strategic scenario was the last thing done. In other words, the game was finished, and I then created the strategic scenario so that I could title. I mean, I always intended to do it, but it was, it was not what the game was about. It was like almost like it's here because it has to be here. and it takes the strategic scenario takes a ridiculous amount of time because you're really playing the war at the operational level, and it's a big war, so that takes a lot of time. But this game was I mean, I think I don't know if I've told the story, but like about Curt Schilling, the famous baseball player, and who was involved, one of the original co-owners of MMP, is a wargamer, and he reached out to me and said he wanted to publish Pacific War again. And I had never intended to republish it, but I said, okay. So I literally said to him, it's Curt Schilling. I said, if you personally sign the contract, I'll do it. So I have a signed contract by Curt Schilling, Hall of Famer, in my possession, which I've won some money in bets with because people don't believe that is true. Anyway, it went through a journey. MMP, Curt Schilling, I guess at some point became uninvolved with MMP. I don't know the details of all of that, but they became less interested, and I just finally decided that I had done all the design work that let's just just call it quits and not push it anymore. And then this company called Nuts, I don't know them very well, but they wanted to do it, and then so they took it on, and they were actually moving along very nicely. Then all of a sudden, there was like a 3-year silence, literally. And finally, I got a hold of them. I said, "What the heck is? Oh, we thought you knew that we had decided not to publish." I said, "Well, my mind reading ability is not that good." So now I've been through 11 years have gone by in this process, and at this point, I just felt like, okay, I'll take one more shot at republishing this, only because I put in all the work, and let's see what happens. So I went to GMT, and they were very interested in doing it, and went on the P500. I think it was literally hours. It was P500, whatever that means. It was going to get published, and then I worked and then COVID hit, and so I spent the 2 years of COVID working on being the developer for this game that a young kid at 31 had done. 31, a long time ago. So I became the developer of my own design, and here you have it.
And do you feel that yourself as a designer, like you changed during that time period when looking back, or there stuff that you think that you would not have done like this if you were to have done such a game today? Or like
I did this game today. I called it Empire of the Sun. So
that's
how I would do it. Yeah. So Empire of the Sun was a direct lineage from this game, because, as I said, the strategic scenario was never meant to be played, but more admired. And it was played even in its day, but it was always like a small group of people who were dedicated to doing that. But that was not the way the game was played. The game was played at the campaign level. We ran it as a tournament in the WBC convention for over a decade using the battle scenarios. So there's a lot of game in here. And I think the way I really describe Pacific War, maybe Gary, you could respond to this. I mean, I see it more as an operational game system that'll play out the Pacific War, but it's not just. I mean, if I'd done it in modules, it would make like today they would have done it as modules, but I just did it in one box.
And that's what is interesting. I didn't expect that to actually being thought out and designed as an operational or a battle system, that you just put everything in one box already. But it could have been like one core game and then having packs being released afterwards. I never thought about this game as structured in this way, because and when I saw that there were so many scenarios, I was just wondering, was the game intended to be played this way, or what is it a way in to play up to the strategic level? So it is really intended to play specific operations, specific engagement.
Yeah. So the original, so even in its day, it would have been considered a complex game, even in 1985, when that was sort of the height. You don't have computer games really competing with board games yet in a big way. The video game market doesn't really exist yet, and so board games are still king. And this is sort of the end of the. I don't know I don't want to talk about it historically, but it was the end of like a kind of design ethos of the time, of very complex simulations and all that kind of stuff. And that's what this was always intended to be. And again, as I always did, I designed it for myself. And hopefully other people liked it. And people really dug it at the time. I mean, we sold
30,000 copies, something like this.
Closer to 35, actually. Yeah. And, so there was a lot of, getting Pacific War on the aftermarket, I don't think would have been that hard. I mean, people may have been asking more than it was worth, but there was
Oh, and I don't know if it's on me, Gary, but I have.
Nope, I got Mark froze too.
Yeah,
I will.
Mark.
Let me chime in on this.
A lot
I
of
would
copies
routinely
out,
see it.
3,000 copies. I just saw anyway. I don't know if it's my internet. Or
I think it's yours
anyway.
because Gary and I can still speak to each other. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I have a good internet where I am, but who knows?
And what were you
is
saying, Gary, about the secondhand market for?
I was routinely seeing Victory Games Pacific War going for anywhere between $80 and $120, say on Punched. I paid $20 for a punched copy because I didn't.
That's what you should have paid. That's about the right price.
I didn't. Well, I didn't want it as a shelf ornament, right? I wanted to play it. I've wanted to play it since I got it 5 years ago, and I just was easier to talk to the gaming group and say, "Hey, look at this! It's real shiny," and get them to play this instead of the old Victory Games one.
Yeah, punching out Pacific War is a pain in the neck.
Oh boy,
it's a lot of counters, and and unlike you, who I do watch your show, Gary. The only reason I have 3 punch copies, one in different locations, and one of them is clipped, but only because Andy Lewis of GMT had clipped his copy, and I went to a convention and I was using my copy, and he said, "Hey, do you want to trade?" I was like, "You're kidding, right?" So he traded me his punch copy of Pacific War for my unpunched, my punch but unclipped copy of Pacific War. I was like, okay, sure.
So I'm going to sound either terrifying or pathetic when I say that I clipped Pacific. Well, yes, but I clipped this new Pacific War in record time. It took me 3 days to clip.
Oh God!
So
God bless you.
Yes, not much else was accomplished during those 3 days.
I should send you my copy so you can clip it for fun and send it back. Maybe that's
that's what I. Well, I will tell you my philosophy. While we're talking, I know you're obviously your whole show is like, what are you clipping right now? And you put the scotch up. It's really, and by the way, I'm a big scotch drinker, so I love watching the scotch part.
Very good.
I was drinking a Balvenie 12 last night.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, it's my favorite actually. But there are certain tactical, like Napoleonic games where you have like every regiment and battalion moving around. I find that I have to clip those because you can't. It gets crowded without clipping.
And facing matters.
Oh yeah, and facing matters, and in the edge of the counters are always hitting each other. So there, I actually will clip a counter. But Pacific War, I mean, most of the counters sit on a display. There's very few counters on the map, at least unless you're playing solo. Then you can, But if you
that's a lot of counter density, though.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I've got my Pacific. I've got it set up right here. I mean, like literally in front of me here, and the whole thing is this game will fit on a card table as opposed to like a longer, more rectangular table, which is very good. So it's like I said, it's a good game to travel with because I can take just like I happen to like the Coral Sea scenario because it. So just to give you the sense that people always say, how long does it take to play, right? Let me just sort of put this in. I actually have real statistics, at least on one. So I was at GMT East when the game came out. This is the one where Andy Lewis gave me his copy, a clip copy at the end. And the first day I did a teach with a group of guys who, one guy had played it like back in the day. They had a little bit of, some of them had a little familiarity with it, but they had forgotten everything. And going through the game with a group of 4 guys took 3.5 hours for this scenario. The next morning, Gary Gonzalez, who's one of the developers of the game, and I have been playing it for 35 plus years. We sat down and we set up, and the game we had left the game, the pieces already segregated. We set up the game and played it in 35 minutes. So it's like it takes us. So when people say how long does it take to play, it depends on that's a big variable, right?
Yeah,
35 minutes to 3.5 hours is a big swing, and that was with setup, by the way. So. So again, some people just like to agonize over things, but I'm not one of them.
So even us learning, because we did play Coral Sea, because it's a favorite battle anyway, right? And we're all familiar with it because we've all played Flat Top at least 20 times. So it took us about 3 hours, to play through Coral Sea while doing a lot of looking at the book. So it plays pretty quick, and setup didn't take that long.
No, it's not a bad setup for this scenario, And what I do with this game, because it's got, I have it in, I had it in 7 counter trades, but I got those new ones that from like Sweden, and I got it down to 5. And now, but I also like to separate things a lot. So
I got to check them out.
Yeah, it's not bad, by the way. They're nice counter trades. They really are. My favorite has always been the Chessex ones. I was sort of. I'm
going to differ with you on Chessex and their counter catapults. Although the more recent ones don't do that nearly
there's
as
a
bad.
trick. So I will tell you the trick with the catapult. So what you got to do is when you get a fresh one, you take it and you just got to run your finger along that ridge. And once you crack the plastic a little, like flex it, it doesn't do that anymore.
Yeah, the newer ones actually don't do that right out of the box.
Yeah, okay.
The older ones are.
But what I like is they stack real well in a box. That's what they're.
They do, for. And they fit in any box, including Avalon. Well, any regular bookcase
size
box, including Avalon Hills. So
which are a little shorter. They're shorter.
Anyway, enough about Counter Tray. We have 90 minutes, and knowing that I'm going to be slow, we're probably going to be around the 3 hours to actually play this game. So maybe it would be a 2-part. The first two parts would be here.
Fortunately, we're already set up.
That's the thing. So I'm going to bring in Vassal on stream. So for people who are wondering how we're playing online, being across an ocean, we're using Vassal, a software where you can play online with people. And we've already picked the scenario. So the setup is already done. So we saved a lot of time when it comes to this. And maybe, Mark, do you want to say a bit about the situation of that?
Yes, I do, actually. So for me, if you leave out the sort of the cool opening Japanese attack scenarios that are in the game, which are the stuff around Pearl Harbor, but mostly the southern attack onto the Dutch East Indies, which is a really good scenario. But you need to really know what you're doing before you get to that one. It's got and that's really where the fun is, right? For me, that particular scenario is one of my favorites. But my other favorites are all the ones around this area. So the game, you could literally play the Guadalcanal all the Guadalcanal campaign stuff, the New Guinea stuff, and pretty much you could just do that for the whole time you own the game and never play another scenario, and you have your value. I think. I mean, that's this alone. And I created this mini map. I won't go into how the original game was, but this allows you not to have two maps set up. Most of the scenarios will play on one map or this smaller map. You only need the two maps if you're going to play pretty much. There's like one campaign scenario you would need it for, and otherwise it's just if you're going to play out the war, which I wouldn't advise for almost for anybody. Although I've got most of my rules questions that come from people starting to play the strategic scenario, and they haven't even figured out how to play the battle scenario yet, which makes sense because it's just a lot to absorb.
I do not recommend that strategy.
Yeah, well, I get yelled at online for it, but I get yelled at all the time, so I don't really care about that. But so let me explain. So this is a very interesting situation that will come up over and over again in the game. So, Fred, you've got the cursor, right?
Yeah.
Put the cursor on Truck, which is that Japanese base in the in the Caroline Island.
The rightmost Japanese base.
Yeah, this one. Yep.
Go. It's the Japanese base that's furthest to the right. What happened to these Vassal? There we go. Yes, that's it. That's Truck. Okay, so that is the main historically and was the main Japanese base that they started the war with, from which they launched all their attacks into this area. And then if you go just left of that to the one on Rabaul, show Rabaul, that's Kavieng. That's Rabaul.
There you
go. In January of 1942, the Japanese captured Rabaul, which is, I think it's called Simpson Harbor, and it's one of the greatest natural harbors, certainly in this area. I mean, it'll hold, it's massive, and it's got volcanoes. I mean, it's an interesting island, New Britain, and the Japanese captured that, and so Rabaul is the forward operating base for Truck. So a lot of the most of their attacks have to either originate there or pass through there, and from there, that's sort of the centroid of their power in this area. Now, if you go all the way to the far left of the map, you see New Caledonia, which is a French, was originally French, and
still is, I think.
I guess it might still be. I don't. I had a friend go there. It's got possibly it looks like beautiful French architecture in the city. Anyway, that is the main Allied base in the area, and that's where most of their forces are going. So what's important about the game is and then one last one is Port Moresby, which is on the southern coast of New Guinea. And by the way, the people are going like, well, isn't north up and all that? Well, this is an equal area. If you were to look at it, you all remember, unless you're one of those flat earther types who are insane, the world is actually a globe.
We don't have those on the show, so you're fine.
Well, I don't know if they're here or not, but the world is a globe. And you can tell that every time there's an eclipse that you don't see a flat line, you see a circle, so just in case people are going like, it's not true, okay. Anyway, it's a globe. And so this is an equal area map that I actually, from a 1942 engineering journal that was published during World War II. And I had it, I gotten the original from the archives and I had it blown up and and it's also the basis for the Empire of the Sun map. That's why they're very similar, looking at a different scale. And so north is towards like Alaska, which is going off of the bottom right corner. That way is north. North is the bottom right corner of this map here. So south is, the opposite of that. If you want trying to get the orientation, but if you see the game, it's really a sweep of the globe from a northern perspective. So going back to this, so those are the sort of the three key points, and of course Australia is down there. And so what's important is if you're fighting, this scenario is going to be, it's how far Truk is and Rabaul is from things that matter, and the same thing for New Caledonia. So the Japanese, by having Rabaul, are closer to the action than the Allies are, but the Japanese big fleet carriers, which stay at Truk usually, they're further back, and so it's the distance between those two, New Caledonia and Truk, that drives all of the geography of all the carrier battles that are famous. Remember, there's only, in this World War II, which is most people don't realize, there's only 6 carrier battles, and 4 of them take place here. The other 2 being Midway and the Philippine Sea. Some could argue that battle in the Guadalcanal was a carrier battle, but not really. So this is 4 of the 6 carrier battles in World War II occur in this region. And so those carrier battles, which doesn't really get captured in books well, is this orientation of New Caledonia. The Truk is what's driving all this stuff. So that gives you sort of the general scenario. And then the Coral Sea scenario is the Japanese, prior to Midway, this is now May of 1942, have decided to run a quick operation to grab this place called Guadalcanal. And Guadalcanal is that, can you put your thing over Guadalcanal there?
Yeah, just here.
Yeah, that's Guadalcanal and Port Moresby. So the idea is this is a 2-pronged offensive to grab Port Moresby and secure eastern New Guinea, and to grab Guadalcanal as a forward operating air base to try to interdict and create, gain control over the Coral Sea and to interdict, Allied forces trying to move it towards New Caledonia. So that's really what the Japanese are trying to do here. And the history will come out. So what's going to happen in this scenario is, and of course, in typical Japanese fashion, they've got a whole number of little task forces that all have very specific missions, but they're all sort of scattered around. And the Allies, we had broken their codes at this period, and so Nimitz had sent down a second carrier, and he was even sending a third down, but it didn't get here in time, into this region to try to block the Japanese attack. And so we hardly here in our. So that's the situation there, Fred. Is there any questions about that, or you got the gist of that?
No, I think I got the gist, and no question in the chat apart from people complaining that they're going to spend money soon, but that's on them. Yeah.
Okay, so the teach. So to start with, the game. So the original game came with what I call a program learning booklet, and it was successful. I mean, at the time, people were able to kind of read the beginning of the rules, play the engagement scenarios, read some more rules, play the battle scenarios, read some more rules, play the campaign scenarios, and then some more rules, and they had the strategic scenario. And that worked out very well. What annoyed the heck out of me was that once you knew how to play the game, finding a rule that was scattered in some case over 4 sections of the rule booklet was beyond annoying. And so in this edition, and of course, GMT had given, they were very, we had an unlimited budget. Was it $125 list or something like that for this game? So
yeah,
there was no restriction whatsoever on whatever I could put in the box. And so to avoid that, I have the game comes with a core set of rules. So everything, in a classic sense is in this rule booklet with a phenomenal index. that was done by this guy named Wilkinson. And, it's like you'll have no trouble finding a rule once you know how to play the game. However, to get back to the programming, it comes with 3 rule booklets, but they're just repeats of it. These are just subsections of the core rules. And so there is a battle scenario rule booklet. So all you need to do is just read this, which is not inconsequential, but it gets rid of, it doesn't have stuff you don't need to know, at least too much. And what I've done in the past is if you've learned how to play the engagement scenarios, just give the booklets away to somebody who might be interested and they can look at it. So that's the gist of it. And so we're going to be playing the battle scenarios, and there is a display, which I think you can bring this up, Fred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I need the bottom of this. I want this bottom piece here.
Go ahead and pull up the American display card. It's on there.
Yeah, I have I think if I take the Allied display, I think it's in there, and
there's nothing on there that I'm not supposed to see at this point.
Yeah. No, and go to the bottom of it, Fred. Very bottom.
This? No.
Yeah, that part right there. Yeah, he's rearranged it in ways that I didn't. Okay, so what you can see there, folks, is you've got columns, which are the phases in the full strategic scenario phases are left to right down that side. The ones in the left that are like in white are lots of administrative stuff and submarine warfare and strategic bombing and intelligence, all that kind of stuff. The stuff that is in orange is the sort of the beginning of the battle cycles, and that whole orange and that blue thing think of those as wheels within wheels. We're going to come back to that, but now go back to the far left of that thing for a minute, Fred.
So can I close that?
The left of this display, I need to see the far left side of this display. I only see right. No, too far.
Too far. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, right there. Okay, so you see there are 4 lines. There says E, B, C, and S. So you'll note that C is strategic scenario. So all of those boxes, if you're playing the full war every month, you're going to go through all of that white stuff in the pre-opening, and then based on operations, you're going to keep doing that battle cycle over and over again. If you're playing a campaign scenario, you'll note that you're playing with most of it. There's a few things not in there. Mostly it's the sinking merchant ships and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But most of it is being played. So the campaign scenario is mostly what you're going to play in the strategic scenario with a few extra, things. But the battle scenario, which is what we're playing today, you'll note the gray. We're not playing with all that stuff. There's only 2 white boxes, and those are the contact phase stuff, which is we're going to cover. And then you're going to do the battle cycle. So basically, Coral C, and Gary said it very well, is one operation that you're going to play, and that's the battle scenario. They're just one operation, and as a consequence, you leave out all that. There's tons of decision making, which is really lots of fun if you're into it, but you're not going to do any of that today. We're just going to worry about this one single operation. Is the Japanese are going to try to take Guadalcanal and Port Moresby, and the Allies are going to try to stop it. I mean, it's that simple. Okay. So let's just focus on that. So what you're going to find out is that there are 2 basic pieces of a battle scenario. There's the contact phase. And so imagine that you got forces that are far apart, and they're going to start moving toward each other. And at some point, they become aware of each other. And when they become aware of each other, that's when you get cycles, and you're going to repeat that battle cycle over and over and over again until the end of the scenario. And that's all of the, what is that, orangey, pinky color straight through. So that whole section on the right there, you're going to go from lighting through all the movement and combat and all that, get to the end of that. It'll take 2 movement increments. I'll tell you what that means in a moment. You flip back to the beginning and keep doing that until the end of the operation. And you don't go back to the contact phase. You just cycle through that battle cycle over and over again until the operation's over. And that would be true.
So just to be clear, operation player contact and reaction player contact will only happen once. Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. I wasn't sure about that because that's what I thought I understood from the rule book, but that's good to confirm.
Okay. Luckily, that's what the rules say too. So that's good.
Good.
And then the battle cycle, which is the heart of the system, you're going to do repeatedly now. And I won't go into the design time scale. I wrote all that stuff in the rules and the design notes. I'm just going to leave that out for now. So what's going to happen now is the first big decision. And what's very important about this game, unlike a lot of Pacific games, intelligence is baked into the DNA of this game. There's no overlay like, oh, if you make your intelligence dial, I get to see your cards, or I get to do one thing or a little thing. No, this is baked into the whole thing. So there are three basic conditions of intelligence. There's surprise attack, and a surprise attack means you have no clue this operation is coming. And that would happen in the campaign games or strategic scenarios. Like you activate your units, and the guy who's activating forces will start to move them out. And the reaction player, who's the other player, can't do anything until one of his planes, presumably a plane, but it could be anything else, sees these enemy forces. And once those enemy forces have been seen, then you kick into the battle cycles, but you don't get to do anything about it. You just go, okay, I see you coming, stop, and we're going to go into battle cycles. I'm going to try to do the best I can with what I got. Then there's an intercept condition where I know you're coming somewhat. I'm not sure exactly what you're doing, and I have the ability either to sight you with my aircraft and use that as my point where I want to stop you, or I can pretty much stop you after you move 2 hexes. That's 200 miles. In other words, I can start to react after you move 200 miles. I can start to move my forces back out to oppose you. And that's a key decision in this game, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And then there's the ambush, which is just sort of a better version of the intercept, where not only do I let you come out, but I get to go twice as far, so I can bring guys from lots of crazy places to do harmful things to you. Because this is the Battle of Coral Sea, and the intelligence condition is intercept. And by the way, the Japanese know that at the beginning. That's not a secret.
So, Mark, just to say when you have ambush, I can react and move twice as much as the operation player.
Twice as far as I let you move. Yes.
Okay, and intercept, I will be able to move as much
as I let you move.
Okay, equal. Okay, that's what I wanted to check. Yes. And before we start jumping into it, there is just want to maybe answer a question that we have here from Viribus, who noticed that while watching the unboxing video, this game was at the highest level of complexity within the GMT scale. And he's asking, and I think it's a bit of sounds like a crazy question, but maybe not. Is the game suitable for beginners, either in the Pacific Theater or wargaming at all?
I'm going to defer to, what do you think, Gary? I think you have a better view of this than I do.
So I believe that there isn't some kind of master committee with metrics and stuff to determine what the complexity is over at GMT on their 9-point scale. I suspect that the conversation went Mark, what do you think the complexity of this game should be? I would put it at an 8 rather than a 9, but that's me. Some other people will tell you differently. On the one hand, I feel like this is not a beginner-friendly game, but on the other hand, it does have a graduated approach to teaching you the game through the engagement of the battle scenarios and so forth. And it is plausible to me that somebody that comes in with fewer preconceptions as an experienced wargamer might actually be advantaged in learning this, because it's very different from almost anything else I've played.
So you think that there is actually a benefit from being a new player?
I think we could have that discussion. I'm not saying I'm going to bet $5 on it, but it's plausible to me. I think you could make that case.
And I will answer that question at the end of our series, because for now I'm unable to answer.
There you go.
So you'll be the best judge of this thing in the end of the day.
Yeah. Good. So I guess back to what you were saying. So the first would be the operation phase for the Japanese, which is the operation player in that scenario, right? And for the Allies, the intelligence status is intercept, so the one in the middle.
Right. And that is going now. So going back to my earlier discussion, so the first big decision is going to come to the Allies, and here's what the decision is. And again, if nothing else, both Empire of the Sun and Pacific War teach you the geography of the Pacific, and distance and range matters, okay, in a big way. And what's interesting, even in today's modern world, nothing's changed other than the Chinese built islands on shoals, which is a new piece of the geographic equation, but everything else is still where it was in 1940, 1941, and so on. So Guadalcanal is six hexes away from Rabal. Okay, and so 6 is a magic number in this particular scenario, and it so happens that the New Caledonia is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 hexes away from Guadalcanal, and their aircraft fundamentally have a 3 hex range. So a good decision, which I'll let Gary pick his own, is how far does the Allies let the Japanese move before they stop them and initiate their reaction? And the answer is, what do you think the answer is, Gary? You've played this scenario. What do you think the answer is here? How far would you like him to let you move if you had your druthers?
As the Japanese player?
Yes. Tell me what the Japanese answer is, and I'll tell you.
I would like to get at least 6 hexes.
Right. And Fred, anytime your opponent tells you what they prefer, what do you think the answer is? Yes or no?
I think it's the wrong answer.
That's right. However, the right answer is 5, I think, for the Allies.
Yeah, okay.
So let's just go with that as a opening assumption, and we'll start it. So what happens now is Gary doesn't know what Fred's going to say, but let's just say, Gary, why don't you move all of your task forces 1 hex, and then I'll explain what a movement increment is. And
maybe just to explain for the people who are watching this for the first time. So as you can see, there are counters where you have a Japanese flag and a white star on and you have a number on it. And those are task forces. And next to them on the player board on the side, you have for each of them a bundle of units that are. So you don't have actually the units on the board. You have task forces, and they're reserved on the side.
I'm gonna try something here. Let me just see if this works.
Yeah, wait a minute. I need to put you in full layout.
Yeah. So this is the actual game. This is an actual game. This is not Vassal, and you'll note that I got to hold my laptop with one hand against my chest. So this stuff over here are the actual units. So you'll note that there's a lot of American units here. Those American units are all in that one counter over here. That's a task force, you see? And the same thing for the Japanese up here. So these all your counters are mostly up there and there. And so all you have on the map are bases and force markers, which relate to things. And that's why it's hidden. You would have a thing between you and and there is, by the way, the game comes with, a fold out thing with all your charts and tables that allows you to block the view of your displays. So Gary, why don't you move the task force? I don't know how movement happened. Can you both touch the board, or is that how this works?
I think so. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So Gary, why don't you just move the task force and truck 1 space?
Okay. So we'll move this here.
Perfect. And why don't you, whatever you're going to move out of Rabal, why don't you move those each 1 space?
Just move.
Because just to explain, so Gary could actually decide to split in 2 forces and have one counter that stays with some units and have another counter that goes with another set of units. So you can freely put those force counters on the go.
And unless you're playing with the dummy task force rule, which is just is in the game, but I put it as an advanced rule. I find at some point this gets you can get silly with this whole hidden movements. Some people want to hide their die rolls and where the search originated from, and again, if you like to play that way, it's fine. At some point, it gets to be a little bit ludicrous. But so Gary, yes, and so there are 2 task forces there or 1 there, Gary? I can't tell.
There's 2. There's 1 task force. Yeah.
Okay, so
that
hex
Gary, right near Rabal.
So what's happened is in the operations phase, and there's a track. Gary has moved 1 operational contact phase movement increment, and there are 2 tasks. And what the American sees, if you're playing the actual game or even on Vassal, you see what you see, right? He moved 1, and now if the Americans had, I might say Americans when I mean allies, just live with it. But in this scenario, it's mostly Americans. There is an Australian unit in the game, a couple of Australian units, but the Americans, if they had a plane or a submarine, forget about that submarine. If they had a plane in range of either one of those task forces, you could make a a search die roll. Now, as it turns out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the guy from Rabal is 5 hexes away from Port Moresby, and it so happens that so just for grins, roll a die.
So maybe I can show what I have in force.
Yeah, ignore
1.
that die I rolled. That was just me hit the wrong button.
Yeah, in Port Moresby. So you see I have force, they have this counter with force 1, and this is actually what's in force 1. So I have that infantry unit here and that plane here.
You don't have an air unit there, right?
And there is
He's
one.
got an
here.
air, but not a long range air.
No,
Yeah.
but it has a 5 hex search range. If you roll, and you would just roll a 10-sided die there once. There, Fred, tell me what you get.
Yep. And I get a 2.
Okay, so if he had rolled a 0 or a 1, he would have gotten some information about that task force that just left Rabal. But by rolling higher than that, he gets no information. So that's
And what decide the threshold for success in oh, wait a minute, I'm gonna show it so people can see. So there is actually a specific
and we were rolling right there. 5 hex range, daylight, F-type air unit. So as you can see, there's just a lot of knowing where to look on various charts and tables, which is obviously makes the game more complex than like Tiddlywinks or something. So it's just going to be what it is. So we've now moved one naval increment. Now, because it's an intercept and we all know the rule, now move your guys one more space there, Gary.
Okay, and I have moved myself up on the naval movement track now 2 steps.
And you went 2 that way. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's another movement increment. So Fred, you can roll again because you're still within 5 hex range of that fighter unit, over in the.
And did the condition change now that he did nothing changed? So I still need to roll.
The condition won't change for the entire scenario.
Okay.
No. The intercept for the whole thing. What'd you get?
0.
Okay.
And 0 is a 0, right?
Yeah. A 0 is a 0. Is a 0. So what? And you'll note that again, I'm holding the chart up here. I apologize, but a 0 is a blue result. See, there's a blue, red, and green result. So a blue result. What is a blue result? So first off, we flip over that task force has now been detected. That's important. So the somebody knows, and because of a blue, it says you have to tell them the number of capital ship units and number of non-capital ship units and whether there is any aircraft carriers in the task force. So Gary, how many? I don't think there's any capital ships here because I know what the 2 are, but
there are not,
and none of them. And now, but is there a carrier present?
There is.
Okay, so there is a capital ship then. Actually, I just realized that's the Shoho. So now Fred knows that. And how many non-capital ships are there?
5. Looks like 8.
Okay, so we'll come back to you had to have 2 task forces. That's too many non-capital ships, but that's beside the point. You had 2 task forces there.
That is true.
That's okay. But we'll worry about that later. There's a limit. There's a task force has to have can't have over a certain number of non-capital and capital ships, but that's a minor point right now. And actually, because of having 2 task forces in the same space, it would have actually given Fred a -1 to the die roll. So his 2 would have actually found you last motion, but let's just leave that aside for the moment.
Well, let me ask that question then. So the limit on ships is screen versus core, and I could put amphibious transports in the core, right?
Right, but you still can have more than 6 non-capital. 6 capital and 4 non-capital ships in a task force.
And that does include the amphib.
Yeah, of course it does. Yes.
Okay.
The amphib is, that's it. The total number is not changed. That's the thing that keeps causing all sorts of like cognitive dissonance for some. But the reality is that's just for flak. If you attack it with air, it's just a flak. How much could be in flak one way or the other? Anyway, regardless, the task force has been seen. Now, Fred, at this point, even in a surprise attack scenario or in an intercept now, could say operational contact phase is over. right? You can just say it's done. And Fred would then be able to move his task force out 2 hexes, and that would be the end of the contact phase. Okay. However, we're not going to do that, Fred.
Yeah, because if I only move 2 hex, I would be pretty far away.
You're not going to get. We want to get our carrier. We're going to use this information to our advantage, not our disadvantage.
Yeah. Sure.
And the good news is we've already got this task force is known, so we're going to be tracking this baby all through the rest of the contact phase, which is good for a lot of good reasons. So, and of course, Gary now knows that he's been seen. That's not hidden information. He knows that there was a spotter plane long enough. They heard a burst transmission from the plane, so they're pretty sure they've been seen, and the allies know where they are. So that is all known information. So Fred says, "Continue, Gary." Say that, Fred.
You can continue, Gary.
It's so good when I put the hand up the back and I make his mouth move. I love that. So Gary, why don't you move another space? And
That's great.
Yep. And at this point, Gary, you might have decided to split those 2 task forces apart just to get so you don't get dire roll. But the good news is it doesn't matter anymore because one, you're out of range from Port Moresby, and there are no other aircraft around to look for you. So things will go a little faster now. So that's 3.
Okay,
go 4.
We'll move a 4th.
Yep. I'm just watching where you send it. Okay, you went there. Got it. And where the carriers go? They went that way. Okay. Got it. Tracking here on my board. And now go 1 more. Right. Okay.
And I guess at 5, it would be a good time to interrupt him.
This is exactly the right time to interrupt him.
Yeah.
So the operational contact phase is over. So now, Fred gets to move his activated forces. Again, in a campaign scenario, there would be this procedure now where he actually turns things on, but we're only doing 1 operation. So all that noise is gone. It's just, you have 2 task forces. You've got one up in Australia and you've got the one down in New Caledonia. So you get to move them 5 and but move them 1 first. You move each of your task forces 1, Fred. It's the one that's up in, what is it, Townsville? Yeah. Okay. Now, the Japanese have planes also. It's a war game. And so the task force has a carrier, which means it has it has a 5 hex range or so. It has spotter planes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So Fred cannot be seen by those guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So Fred can go 1, 2, 3. You can go move your guys up to 4 hexes. It just so happens that the Japanese have a seaplane base sitting on Shortland Island. Why don't you just show them where that is, Fred?
And which
Shortland is that just near the guy that's
Force 01.
Which one?
Force 01.
Force 01. Oh yeah, this one.
Yeah, so there's an LRA aircraft there, and the LRA has an 8 hex range. And so when Fred goes 4 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, he's now still out of range of all Japanese aircraft. Remember, I told you at the beginning, range matters. And so Fred, when you move the 5th one, which is as far as you can go, and now move your 5th, Gary gets a LRA. He can try to sight whatever the heck is coming out. He knows it's carriers, but that's just because you know the scenario. But in a real game, you wouldn't necessarily know what that is. And so Gary gets 1 die roll against that guy who's now within range of his.
As is traditional.
A good 9.
A 9. Okay, so the Japanese have no idea where that plane is. Okay. So now we're done with the contact phase. That's entirely done.
The great thing about rolling a 9 is I don't even have to look at the chart.
Yes, that's the other thing. Basically, if you're rolling 7, 8s, and 9s, unless you're very, very close, they're failures. And so a lot of times, once you understand the table, you see 0s, 1s, and 2s, you look. If you see high numbers, just keep going. You don't have to keep looking it up, but again, you have to just play the game one time to figure that out. Okay, so now we're totally done with the contact phase, and that's not going to come back. So now we're into the heart of the game, which is the battle cycles. And I'm setting it up here so I can keep it in front of me. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is lighting. So light matters at an operational game, and the timing of when they launch strikes relative to the daylight and nighttime, and when they wanted to arrive places at nighttime mattered. And since Gary is the operations player, he has a choice to make right now. He can determine the lighting condition right now, and he can say it's nighttime if he wants, or he can say it's dusk if he wants, or he can say it's the afternoon or the morning if he wants. Or he could forego that. We'll figure it out randomly. And then later in the scenario, one time, he can push the lighting condition one box, which, could turn dusk into night or afternoon into dusk or, night into day, whatever. But so it's up to you, Gary. Do you want to roll or do you want to save it?
I'll set it at dusk.
Good choice. So we're at dusk now. And what dusk means, well, first off, is that planes that take off for a strike are landing at night, and then you're likely to have some kind of attrition for night landings. That's the gist of that in this case. So we're done with that. So now it is the operational movement phase. And so Gary gets to move 2 hexes. All his task force can move 2 hexes now.
So do we say that advantage Japanese player?
Yes, the advantage is, I believe that's in the scenario rules, isn't it? Yeah, operation player is a Japanese. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So advantage.
Oh, wait. Hang on a second. Wait a minute. No, excuse me. It's an intercept, and it doesn't specify. So we have to roll. We each roll a die. High die roll is the advantage player. I take it back. I forgot it's not specified in the scenario.
Hey, look at that.
9 again. And 1. Okay.
I expected to roll the 1, to be honest. Okay, so who's
the advantage player?
I am. The
Gary.
Japanese.
Yeah, Japanese.
Okay, so just as I said. So go ahead, Gary, and move up to 2 hexes.
Yeah, and you'll see when the sequencing of the different phases of the battle cycle happen, how it's nice to be the advantage player. So we'll move 1, and that's sufficient. 2.
Now, one thing you're always allowed to do during a movement phase is ground movement can precede naval movement, or it could come after naval movement. So in this case, Gary would like to do his ground movement, which means he can disembark whatever's on. If there's any transports, he said there were transports, you get to disembark onto Guadalcanal, whatever you want to disembark on Guadalcanal.
Yep. I'm looking for the markers here. Hold on a second. There it is.
And what's important about that is Gary has achieved one of his 2 objectives by pulling this off this way.
Now it's my turn to struggle with to finding the force markers in the vassal module. Let me just put them out, and there'll be a force numbered whatever on Guadalcanal.
Yeah, what are you landing on Guadalcanal?
Oh, some troops. So I'm struggling to pull the display up. Bear with me. There we go. All right, so I'll just tell you, we are landing some Marines and some engineers.
Marines and engineers have landed on Guadalcanal. Okay. Just as if I was doing it, I would just have landed the engineers. I'd keep the Marines for later. There's nobody to oppose you in this scenario. He's got no ground forces.
That's fair.
So I would just land the engineers, because the Marines will be very. If you ever actually get to invade Port Moresby, they're going to be very useful.
Yeah, fair. Okay, cool. That sounds good.
All right. So we're now done with movement. Now it is. We would now have advantage air missions, but there's really, I guess it's dusk. So 1, 2, you're at a range of. First off, you haven't detected you haven't detected the allies,
Mhm.
but you get to roll for them now. You can look for them
Well, let's find out.
if you want. You might want to do that.
Look at that.
What do you roll?
That's
0.
Oh, so the American carriers have been detected now because it was a 0 at really long range. All you know is that there's something there, and Fred would tell you plus or minus. He'll tell you that there's anything from 8 to 3 naval units in that space. But given the scenario, we know what's there.
I would say it's a very small force. There is only 3.
Yeah, it's only 3. So, but you detected whatever it is. You now are aware of their presence. So that is, and are you going to launch an air mission? I don't think you have anything within range, Gary.
I am not launching an air mission at this time.
So now we would do. So now going through the sequence of play, we would, if there were naval units from the opposing sides in the same hex, there would be a naval combat cycle, which is not the case. So we skip it. Then, if there was, surface ships in an enemy space and there was targets there, you could do a bombardment. So in other words, if you had cruisers now in Port Moresby, you could start to bombard the facility there, but that's not the case either. Now we're up to ground combat, but we don't have that. I'm saying these things, but I won't do this every turn, but I'm just going to walking through all the things that could happen, but are not going to happen. Now, if an airfield had been prior damaged, you would repair it. If there were ground forces that were no longer in contact with the enemy, you could rally them. And now it is Fred's movement phase. So, Fred, you can move your 2 task forces up to 2 hexes. And, of course, each time you move 1 hex, Gary can take a shot at discovering you.
Okay, so I'm going to move here and here.
And, Gary, you want to roll some... well, you already know you can get maybe better information, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. 6. That's probably not better.
I guarantee that's a miss. Move again, Fred. And the rule for search is you can only search for a task force 1 time per phase. So you've already searched for the aircraft carriers. You can't search for it again. You can only search once per hex, and every unit control. So the carriers are still detected, but you don't get you had your 1 shot at getting more information. And you might be able to roll for that other one.
For 17, don't you? Because you're in range now.
Sitting on Lay that he can roll against.
5, 6. Yeah, yes. I'm actually
Yeah, so he might have a 3.
That's a 4.
He actually would do better from Lay with the guys that are sitting in Lay. I think. Yeah, roll the dice. As long as it's 3 or less.
I got a 4.
You got a 4.
4 is insufficient to find them. Okay, so we now have done all of that. Now, if there were, if this was this is the time when you would activate and deactivate. But in battle scenarios, you don't. Everything is active from the beginning of the battle scenario, so you don't do any activations. But if you were in port now, and it's one of the victory conditions, everybody has to get home before the scenario is over. The scenario is 21 days long, and because of the 5 movement increments, 2 days of 21 have been expended. So we have 19 more days. We're going to come to that. We're actually just expended 2 more. But we've used up 2 time increments, and everybody has to get home by the end of the scenario. They're counted as, lost for victory point purposes. And so the part that seems to bedevil people is counting. Okay, so every movement phase, you can move basically you move 1 space per 1 time increment. That's really what it comes down to. Every battle cycle's 2 days, 2 time increments. You can move 2 hexes. So basically, anytime you look at the chart, and so we finish up with, we now move the time increment from 2 to 4. So right now we have 17 total days, or said another way, we have 17 hexes of movement left in the scenario. Okay, you with me, Fred?
Yeah, and where do I see that?
So we should have expended 2 days. I think it's 1 per.
I did. You expended 2 days from
from the contact phase, right?
Correct. And then you just expended 2 more for this battle cycle. So you've expended a total of 4 time increments have been expended.
And just to be clear, where is this tracked in the?
It's sitting on the operation display, which by the way is the main display of the game. It's right in front of me here.
Yeah. So Fred, it's under.
I'm there.
Timekeeping, I think.
Yeah. So what happened was, you see. Wait, stop. Hold on, Fred. Hold on.
Yeah.
So you see, there's 2 lines of boxes, and you'll see the lower one says naval movement track. See that?
Yeah.
Okay. So when we went through the contact phase, there was a marker that would have moved from the 0 box to the 1 box. And every time you go into a box with a shading, a time increment is expended. And when getting to 5, you'll see we went through 2 of those boxes. That's the 2 days, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now go back to the circular display that you had a second ago. And there should be a marker but 21 is the end of the scenario. So put a marker, there should be a marker to put on like op end on 21. Some of them say there's to fool people. Yeah. So one goes on 4 and one goes on 21, which is the end, and the day marker should be on 4. Okay. So when the day marker either lands on or passes through, and that's important. Sometimes you can sometimes squeeze an extra little bit of juice out of it at the end of the scenario because we don't worry about that little half thing. The scenario is over, and any ships that are still at sea are considered lost for victory point purposes. So at any point in time, your ship is more spaces away from its port than there are days left in the scenario you have screwed up. Okay, that's just simple. It's not that hard.
Welcome to the bottom of the ocean.
Well, it's just a victory condition thing, just to make you play correctly. So you always have to know how far is my task forces from their base, and if anytime days exceeds distance, you're screwed. Okay, it ain't that hard. But if you have trouble counting to 10, that could be a problem sometimes. So here's where we are, and now you will also note that since the going back to the main, the map now, because there are no ships in the same hex, anybody who is detected now becomes undetected. So flip over. So you knew about your information about the carriers is getting wonky now because you haven't found them in a little while, and you have to start that all over again. Okay, so we have now finished an entire battle cycle. So I guess the question is, do you have any questions, Fred?
I think for now, all good. I think we can. It's going to be. I guess the closer we're going to get to each other, the more we're going to worry.
Well, no, actually, you're already close enough. You see, right now, you'll see in the next little sequence what's going to happen. So everybody's where they are, and you're 3 hexes. I'm just trying to keep track of where you are.
So I'm 3 hexes away from Guadalcanal.
Yeah, I see that, and you're 2 away from there. Okay, we're good. So I got everything on my map caught up to the vassal mark. Okay, so now we go to the battle cycle. Show up that battle cycle thing again. The sequence of play tracks.
Yep, I think it was here.
So now we finish to the far right. We bounce now because it's a circle. We come back to lighting, and lighting is the day marker advances 1 box, and unless Gary does something, it goes from dusk to night. So we're at nighttime. Mm-hmm. And the most important thing, this is World War II, not modern day, with some small special units like we have, Black Widow, Night Fighters, and we got really experienced pilots can do few things at night, and the Japanese have some things, and we have the fundamentally nighttime is no air operations. I mean, leading all that. You with me? Are we back? I'm back.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I had a short drop.
I see every so often it resets, and I don't know what's going on here. But anyway, I'm in a summer house, and the internet's what it is. So it's nighttime. So now it is advantage. Well, we have to determine who the advantage player is, and so you're each going to roll a die. High die roll gets it. And ties go to the guy who had it last time. So if it's a tie, it stays Japanese. What were the rolls?
0 and 3. Brutal rolls, high rolls. Yeah. So I get the advantage this time.
Okay. So you are the advantage player, but unfortunately, and because this was where Gary made a very good decision, he calculated that it would be nighttime. So even though you've got carriers near his force, there going to be no air operations. And the other thing is, because things move 2 hexes, getting your carriers closer than 2 hexes, and this came up in somebody I just posted online the other day, and they were all, oh my God, and he had this really complex, set of things happen, which could happen in the game. And he was like all undone. And then he asked for like, what's my advice? I said, don't put your carriers so close to the other guy's service ships is the short answer. So Fred, you don't want to get within 2 hexes of any Japanese task forces unless you want a surface battle. And you don't have that task force is basically 2 carriers and a cruiser division and a DD, a destroyer squadron. So you don't want to get closer. So you get to move 2 hexes, but you do know from the scenario that he's going to be heading towards Port Moresby. So you could shoot 2 hexes north. And Gary does get some die rolls from those LRAs do fly at night. So if he can, every time you move a hex, each time you move that guy 1 hex, 1 time, he can try to roll a 0.
Because there is no chance for me to. There is no way for me to take back Guadalcanal now. It's done.
No. There was this one. Remember, historically, the Allied carriers showed up, and after the fact, and they did launch a strike. The first strike of this battle was there was a carrier strike against the Japanese invasion fleet in the Guadalcanal, Tulagi, roadstead. And they don't think they did much damage, but that was the first strike of the scenario. So we were just trying. You could have maybe gotten lucky and if the lighting condition was different and you won the advantage and blah 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 blah, you might have gotten in an airstrike before he landed. It could have sunk the transport, but it's a long shot. But that's what we were shooting for. That's it. But
so that's gonna be. I'm gonna do 1, 2 like this.
Yeah. So why don't you roll the dice, Gary? You need a 0 to see him with that LRA.
1.
It was close, but no.
Yep, that was close.
And then the 417, can I?
They get to go 2 also, and because it's at night, and I don't think there's an LRA in Rabaul. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So Gary, when you move that task force, Gary will get another die roll out of the LRA out of Rabaul.
And I can put it in Port Moresby, right?
You can, yeah.
But would that be a good idea?
It would certainly, when the Japanese show up, having some ships with 8-inch guns would be good. Yes.
Okay, and I will go.
And then Gary gets a die roll for the LRA.
Nope.
Not at night.
Okay, but the other thing is, you are now in range. There are 2-engine bombers and there's other aircraft in Rabaul. So by being that location, which is fine, he may decide to launch airstrikes, in future battle cycles because you're basically there. That's all.
Good.
Which I'm sure he'll do because it's fun. So we have done that, and I'm just going to skip through, and there's nothing else to consider with all those other cycles except Gary gets to move now.
Okay, so disadvantage movement.
Yeah, we skipped, by the way, for everybody in the live stream, we skipped through all the naval combat and ground combat and bombardment and rallying and all that stuff because it's not, and that's what happens in this game. Once you understand the cycle, you just go, okay, none of this is happening. Here's where I am, and it goes pretty quick.
So that's 1.
Yep.
That's 2.
Yep. And he doesn't have any ships that can do anything.
It's nighttime anyway.
It's nighttime. Well, he doesn't have any. If he had an LRA, he could look at night, but he doesn't have one. Yeah, he has no LRA. He has an LRA out of New Caledonia, but it's not close enough to do anything.
Don't I have one here now?
You have what and what there?
An LRA in Port Moresby.
I'm not aware of. Is there one there?
Because it's 417, and I think I have an LRA.
When 417? No, isn't 417 in Australia?
417 is now in Port Moresby.
How did
that started in Townsville?
Yeah, it's the one that started in Townsville.
Yeah, I understand that, but you never flew the plane. You moved the task force, but you never flew the plane.
Oh yeah, keep the plane back in Townsville.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the thing. So should I have a task
force?
First
of all,
over there?
the naval unit should not be in a force marker. They should be in a task force marker. I can't see it. It's a little small.
Okay, so that's why. Okay.
Yeah. Those guys should not be on a force display because they're at sea. So they're on a task force marker. Same thing for the carriers. I just can't see. It's very small on my screen. I can't see what you guys have actually. Yeah.
So
I'm struggling a little bit finding the task force. Oh, I just found them. How about that? So never mind. Yeah. I found the task force markers. Yeah. So I've actually been splitting stuff up because the regular force markers are in a different tab in Basel. So, so yes, but anything at sea is a task force.
Okay, so maybe we can go through that. I think Ardi, I don't know if you, Gary, if you see the screen better, but then I need to split those two and probably replace the counters, right?
Yeah, just
I
put
guess.
the planes that were in that original force back in Townsville, and then put them on a different numbered force. And you can get to the forces by clicking on the icon at the top that says
on the game markers one.
Yeah, it is under game. It's going to be under Japan, and then there's a tab for Japanese task forces, and then Japanese force markers is a separate tab.
I think that's for me. That's going to be probably allies.
It is, yes.
It's allied force, and I'm going to take. I'm going to scroll. Oh no, allied task force. Okay, so I could have. I think I'm going to do TF1 and a TF2.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's going to be fine. TF1, TF2. Then I'm going to move back Force 17 to Townsville over there. And then I'm going to move back Force 16 back to Noumea.
Yes.
So that's fine. Then I can remove the markers from here. And then I just need to reorganize my stuff. So I have. So how should I organize them?
Just put the destroyer and the cruiser in the left box of that task force, and put the carriers in the right box. And with the other ones, put them both in the left box. The plane stay with the carrier, obviously.
Yeah.
You should have a cruiser and a destroyer in that group. Yeah, there you go.
Deep.
And
okay, perfect.
You should have the Lexington and the Yorktown there. And then the other group, put both counters into the screen because the cruiser can't be in the core.
And I keep the Lexington in the core.
Yes, of course. Yeah, they're carriers. And they always have to be in the core. That's a rule.
Good. Okay, great. Okay, so
move the Northampton, the task force 2, move that guy, the blue guy.
Yeah.
To where the Australian is.
Okay, so both of them in screen.
Now you're correctly set up.
Okay, good.
In the screen, it's only valuable from it's only where it's again. People can wrap themselves around the axle around a lot of things, but that's it. That's the whole task force rules right there. Okay, so we're done with. So we're done with the. So again, we go. Nobody's deactivating, I assume.
Nope.
And we move 2 more increments of time. So now we're up to day 6. 6 increments of 21 have gone by. So how many are left now, guys? Do the math for me.
So we're at 6, so 15 days left.
How much?
15.
15, right. So we have how many hexes of movement are left in this scenario?
15? 6. Oh, 6. Wait a minute. Wait. So how do I count this then, just to be sure?
So it's half of that number rounded down.
Yeah.
Actually,
that's in battle. No, but that's in battle cycles. The actual. That's what I'm trying to say. You're making it too complicated. If there's 15 increments of time left in the scenario, there's 15 hexes of movement total left in the scenario. That's the way to think about it. So anytime, so just keep track of how far your ships are from their ports, and you're fine. And Gary, the guys in Guadalcanal stayed in Guadalcanal?
The guys in Guadalcanal stayed in Guadalcanal, and I replaced the 2 as
I see.
with actual task forces.
With actual task forces.
Yeah. What you did. Yeah. I got you now.
Oh, and we have just a question around what was the problem with setup. It was not really a problem with setup. It's just that originally Gary and I moved the forces counter, and we didn't see where the task force counters were in the vassal module, but we cleaned it up. So now you have forces and task forces, just to be all clear. So no problem in the setup. It was just a problem from us for the first move.
Yeah, I was just kind of trying to save time, and that was dumb. So let's not do that.
Okay, so we are now into a new battle cycle. The lighting is going to be day AM. Are you going to push it, Gary? Or you're going to leave it? Oh, you use your option up. It's morning. Yeah. It's morning. Yeah. So daylight. So you both roll the die for advantage. This is going to go very fast now.
Yep. Good. So I have the advantage. So I will go first.
Yeah. So now, before you move, you have a choice. You can move 1 hex or not, but you might want to try to get a sighting on that task force that's coming back up the slot if you can.
Yeah, the task force 4, right?
Yeah. So you need to roll low. Just roll. So
it's 4 hexes away. So I'm going to roll
0, 1, or 2.
I rolled a 6.
Wasn't it?
So you won't be able to search for them again this phase. So now move your task forces both 1 hex.
And I'm probably I want to reach Port Moresby with my new task force, right?
Well, I guess the answer is putting carriers into port is not a good idea.
Oh, and actually, I just need to be able to go back to Numea at some point, so I can.
No, you have to go back to a port. You can go back to Australia.
Oh, so I could go back to Australia. Okay, because I'm thinking, but because I'm trying to think about the move that he's gonna do, so I'm thinking I can just like aim to be somewhere around here.
Yeah, you can. Just but at all times remember how far away a port is.
Yeah. So
just so you know, where you're planning on being is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You're 10 away. So somewhere in the next couple of time increments, you got to be going back home. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Ça c'est loin. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, and just a question.
By the way, Gary, remember when he's moving, you can try at least 1 shot at each of those task forces to find them.
Yeah, and we'll actually do a search in Task Force 1. Let me check where the...
And I need to go back to a port where I have a base, right?
Oh,
it has to be a port with a base. That's correct.
Yeah.
Well, you can't go back to a port. You have to go back to a base.
Yeah, I have to go back to a base. So and there is no base in Port Moresby right now.
There's a base there. You could end your move in Port Moresby.
Okay, it's here. Okay, so I'm not. So if I think about this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so I'm actually 7 away from there, and the stacking limit is 48 steps, right?
Well, not only for ground, you can have an unlimited name.
Okay, so it's fine. I can always go back to Port Moresby.
You don't even have enough ships to even get close.
Yeah.
Okay, so Gary, you got to roll, don't you?
Yeah, I just actually rolled a 3. It's 3. Task Force 1 is 3 hexes away with long range air. So that's
you found him. So you're flip yourself to the detected.
Yeah.
Task Force 1 has been detected, which is interesting.
Yeah, we both did it.
Yeah.
And his carriers are. Oh, this could get interesting. So this is going to be classic. So all right. So you're done moving, Fred?
Yeah, I'm done.
Gary, it's
okay,
yours.
So disadvantage movement phase.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go 1.
Oh, wait a minute. Could I have moved the second hex then? After you search for me, because I only moved 1.
Oh yeah,
hex.
yeah. You always
Sure.
Okay, so then I would just be go here.
Okay.
Okay. Good.
2. And I should technically move. I should technically do that this way. 1, 2.
Yeah.
1.
Right, and so let him get a chance. He has to get a chance to search for you after each hex. So go back to the first hex and let him.
Well, that's going to be right here.
Yeah. So,
okay, so
you want to search for that guy?
Yeah, I will be 3 away, and I rolled a 2, so I guess I sight him.
Yeah, you'll see something.
Yep, you'll definitely see something with that. So you already know this. There's a light carrier there from before, and then do you have a shot at seeing his other task force? 1, 2. Yeah, you got one long range. You need a 0 to see the other task force.
I'm gonna try that then. And nope.
Okay, so now comes a potentially dramatic moment, I guess. Where exactly are they?
Oh, and there is Thomas who's asking, is this battle scenario 2? Yes, I think battle scenario 2
Yes,
is Coral Sea, so that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it is about 1. Are you 4 hexes away from his task force there, Gary?
I am 3 hexes away from his task force.
3 hexes away.
Right, but I'm talking about with the heavy carriers. No, they're closer to the wall.
So it's 5.
Yeah, it's too bad. So Gary has an opportunity now. He has a detected task force. He's got airplanes. What do you want to do?
In the interest of, hey, we want to show people this, we are going to, it's a disadvantage air mission phase. So we are going to launch the carrier air off of the Shoho and send them in the direction of Task Force 01.
Sounds good.
They might get the absolute crap shout out of them, but
it may not. Well, it all depends on what this next die roll is.
Yes, it does.
So it's a daytime search. So Fred, you need to roll a 5 or less right now.
And I rolled a 2.
You have sighted the. So now we go into the airstrike is detected. Your planes come up off the deck, and we're going to have a air-to-air combat now before anything else happens. Then we're going to have flak. And then if anything survives all of that, he gets to try to take a shot at one of your ships. So
I would put my
I don't know how to do it. Yeah. So the way it is it's one plane on one plane, but then other planes add to your combat strength. So as it turns out, the American planes both have a starting anti-air strength. Let me just do the Allied ones just to walk through the math. So on the counter, the American, it's an L1 fighter plane off the deck of the carrier. It's a 6 strength unit, but because it's only 5 steps, it's really got a starting strength of 5. But because there's another L1 unit in the battle and it's got at least 3 steps of it, it gets to add 1 back in. So, Fred, roll the die. You need a 6 or less.
I roll a 6.
Okay, so that's going to, I have to know off the top of my head, that's going to be one hit on the, and these are simultaneous, but you hit one of the Japanese planes.
Yeah, and you already
the
had
Japanese
4.
plane is going to fire back, and he needs a 0 or 1. It's a 5
Nope.
minus. What'd you get?
The 5.
5, so nothing.
No, okay. So one of the planes from the Shoho was splashed. Now there's only 15 planes technically left. So now we're going to have flak. And the flak is going to be a strength of 2, 3. Is a 4. Roll a 4 or less there, Fred, to hit him.
I rolled a 9, unfortunately.
Okay. So what we've just gone through is it was an air-to-air combat. Some of the Japanese planes were knocked down by the cap. Then the flak went up, but it didn't hit anything. And so now, what would you like to shoot at? I assume you're just going to shoot at one of the carriers.
So am I forced to abort because I only had 2 steps of air in there already?
No, but you only got 1 hit.
Okay.
You have to take, if you took 2 hits, well, if you had 2 hits would have eliminated the unit, but any unit that takes 2 hits would abort, but you only took 1 hit,
okay.
so you're good.
Okay. We'll shoot at whatever carrier we see.
So you got the Lexington and the go for the Lexington. We'll go historical. How's that?
Sure. And then I'm shooting it with a 5, so I'm
no.
Like firepower is basically a 0 here.
No, incorrect. I'm looking at an L1 air unit. It's a 6 minus 5 is a 1.
Wouldn't it be a good time maybe to show the combat result table?
Sure.
I'm gonna bring it up here. So this is the search track and and this is naval and air combat.
Demonstrate my spectacular miss.
How many times you want? I'm just walking through the math. I don't have control of anything.
Yeah, so, I'm just showing it.
Walk back through. Yeah,
a cool thing is that you're kind of going to get an adjusted firepower, and however that calculation works depending on what the combat looks like, and you're trying to get that number or less on this table, right? So if I'm shooting at a 1 and I rolled a 3, which is what I rolled, then I don't really need to look the result up on the table.
Yeah,
at least for
correct.
this.
That's correct. You missed. But if you had rolled a 0 or 1, well, 0 would have been a critical hit on top of
that. Could have been spectacular.
Yeah, but a 1 would have been 1 hit on the Lexington. But anything higher, he missed. So this air
50 hours in this game, and I've never once rolled a critical hit at an air attack.
It'll happen someday.
This is not your fault, Mark.
I take no credit for the dice. Anyway, so this air mission's done, and his planes fly back to the. So these battered boys show back up at the Shoho. One with some of their friends no longer there, and that is the. And then we have a joint activation deactivation phase, and then we burn 2 more days. So if we were 15 days before, we're now at 13 days, right? 13 days, 13 hexes of movement remaining in the scenario. And as I said, you can see that it can go pretty quick. This is not, and because we've only got effectively 2, maybe 3 battle cycles of actual anything can happen, because at some point you got to either get somewhere or go home.
And so now we're at day 8.
Yeah, we are at day 8. I agree. So back to it. We go back to the lighting condition. Now, when you get from the morning, we get into the random determination. So we don't know what the next lighting condition is going to be. Roll a die, please, Fred.
Yep. And that's a 6. So a 6 would be.
We got an afternoon, day PM.
Yeah, day PM.
So we have an afternoon. So we're still in daylight. Sometimes it could have small chance it would have gone to dusk or night, which is always interesting. But typically it's going to go to an afternoon. So roll for advantage, gentlemen.
Still get advantage.
Okay. So
that's a significant roll.
By the way, the American carriers are no longer detected. That's important. Everybody that's detected is not detected. That's important because we got to do that again. So, Fred, if you could successfully, you're 3 hex away. I wouldn't get closer, but if you could successfully roll a 3 or less, life is going to get good for you in a second.
No, I rolled an 8.
Life
yeah, that's too bad. And now I can do my
you
moves.
got one more shot. You were going for the CVL, but 1, 2, 3, 4. Try to roll a 0 from Port Moresby against the. Oh, yeah. By the way, I'm going to go back when also Fred, when you had your disadvantage air mission fail. Can it get there?
I'm actually 5 away, so I have that. Yeah, I didn't think about this.
Right there. A 5 hex range LRA for the allies.
For the I didn't think that for Task Force 6 was now in range actually for me to.
But roll one more time for the heavy carriers. You can get a 2 or less. That would be good.
No, I got a 3.
So you now have you can now move. When you can search at any time, either before you move, at the end of your movement, during your movement. But again, the 1-1-1 rule, you can only look 1 search per 1 tab.
Oh, and I don't know if it's on your side too, Gary, but I think we completely lost Mark.
That's no good.
But then my question, Gary, while Mark is reconnecting, and I think he's back, is if I can search at any point during my move, would there be any benefit for me to go from here to here, search, and then do my last move here?
Yes, because you're searching at a closer.
You would have picked up 10% chance. But you rolled an 8 anyway, so it wouldn't have mattered. But yes, it would have been.
Yeah, it wouldn't have mattered, but I could have.
Yeah, you could have done that
here, do the search
in and zoom back out again. Yeah, you could have done that.
Yeah, and then move here.
Yeah.
But you do, as a general principle, want to pick when you execute that search to be the most advantageous time.
Yeah.
Making some other assumptions about, do you want to end up within 2 hexes of me, for example, which maybe you don't, unless you want to have a giant surface battle.
And just maybe we can probably just take a question here. There is a question from Joe who's asking, is it ever a viable strategy to intentionally send out a task force beyond port range just to try and inflict a big hit on some vulnerable enemies, and like a desperate move?
The answer is, given this
Well, let Mark explain that. I say probably not. That seems like a pretty. I mean,
it would have
mathematically,
to be super
mathematically, maybe you think that might be a viable thing, but I can, I've put a decent amount of time into this, and I have encountered no situations in which I think that would have been a good idea.
Yeah. And just like a comment from Mike regarding the orientation. So earlier in the stream, actually, Mark was explaining what kind of projection he was using and where it all made sense. So if you go afterwards, maybe back into the intro, there is a whole explanation from Mark about the orientation, which is really interesting. And we dropped Mark again.
Yeah, and you could probably go find a picture of the entire map on Board Game Geek, which will kind of help you visualize. Because it is an unusual map projection that I haven't typically seen in any other Pacific games other than Empire of the Sun.
And Mark is back.
Yeah, and also I think I solved the problem. I had a VPN going, and I think that the VPN was not liking the broadcast studio.
Probably
that's
not.
plausible.
No. Yeah.
So hopefully it'll be better now, because I couldn't understand why I kept kicking out. I mean, I've got pretty good internet here, but I guess now I know why. All right, so I killed the
less good VPN though.
Yeah, we right now, there are people in the Far East who are robbing all my money.
So
I have some LRA here. Could I try to cite this one?
You can still go for that one. Yeah, every unit can do 1 search. Every task force can only be searched once, and every hex can only be searched once. However, you break those simple conditions up. So yeah, you can get a search.
And both Task Force 4 and Task Force 6 are within range, so I could try.
No, you cannot look for them, because we just did this once. You already had that die roll. No, you're done with these.
Yeah, okay.
You did it.
Okay.
you failed both die rolls. That's why we're here.
Okay. Yeah. So it's once per hex. Okay. So
A
I'm done.
shifty allied attempt at deception.
Yeah, I thought that. I said, wait a minute. I thought we just had this conversation. Anyway, so now we blow through all those middle sequences, and we're up to disadvantage movement again.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we've got. You had a hard. We have 12 minutes, so let's say this will be the last battle cycle. Hopefully, something will happen, but
something will happen.
Hopefully.
Okay. That's 1 hex, and I think we're going to go 2 hexes on that, and 2 hexes.
You get to search,
on that. And we will search for Task Force 1.
Yep.
So let's roll for that. That's a 5 from 2 hexes away.
Yep. 5's nice.
Yeah, so I should pick that up. I don't have the chart in front of me. Hold on.
Hey, I got it. I'm looking. Go ahead, roll.
I got a 5.
Perfect. So that is now detected.
Okay.
And this is going to be big now, Fred. You're going to find out how this is going to go.
Yeah, and I'm going to search for our Task Force 2 as well with the long range stuff.
Yeah, roll low.
3. That's pretty good.
That's good.
Let's see. How far was the LRA away?
3. Wait.
Double check that.
5.
5 away. Yeah.
5.
And so it was a 2 or less die roll.
So it didn't work out. Yeah.
So Task Force 2 not detected.
Okay. But now we're into the disadvantage air mission phase, and you've got heavy carriers within range of American carriers. Am I correct?
Oh, we do.
Okay. So now comes the fun.
Yeah. So I'm going to launch. This will give us a nice send off here for the session. Let me pull everybody out here.
Right. Just to see, so we see how this is going to go. Roll the die. You're trying to detect this airstrike. You need now. It's the Americans are better at this. You need a 6 or less. 6 or less.
And I did a 7.
Okay. This might be spectacular.
Now we're getting somewhere. So what happens now is the cap didn't come up. There will be flat fire after the strike. So right now, Gary, how do you want to? So you've got 2 very good air units who have each one has a air to naval strength of 6, and you got 2 carriers. What do you want to do?
Oh, I think we're gonna go. We'll split them up, and we'll send the extra guy that's got 1 step left after the Lexington. So we'll do it this way. These two guys will go after the Lexington. This guy will go after the Enterprise.
Yorktown.
Okay, I'm
just
going to put.
The first let's do the 2 strikes against the Lexington. So you need a first die roll is a 6 or less, and it'll be another 6 or less.
Okay, so that is a 5.
Okay, we're going to get some action here. So that is a 5 going down. You got 1 hit. So the Lexington took its first hit, which, by the way, will eliminate 1 step of aircraft, but we'll worry about that later. The next die roll, 6 or less again.
This is the weak guy. So this is it's I wish it was 6 or less, but it is a 1, and I think I am at.
What happened to you? Had 2 planes going against the Yorktown. Did you roll? I didn't see the die rolls.
No, I have 3 planes total. So I have 1 of the full strength flights going against the Lexington, and 1 of the full strength flights going against the Yorktown. And then the guy off the show hose going after the Lexington.
Okay,
which
so
I rolled.
We're done with the Lexington. So now this is the strike against the Yorktown.
Well, this is why I got 1 more against the Lexington.
Yeah, that's the second shot for the Lexington.
And that's the guy with only 1 step left. So his air to naval is 6 minus the number of steps he's down. So 6 minus 5 is 1. And I rolled a 1, which is going to do another hit on the Lexington.
So what happened to? I guess I missed one of the die rolls. So the first die, walk me through the die rolls. First die, yes, you got 2 hits on the Lexington. That's correct.
Yeah. So the first guy, the L2 guy, the guy off of the heavy carriers, the fleet carriers, rolled a 5. So that did a hit. And
on which target?
On the Lexington.
Got it. So that got the first hit on the Lexington.
Right. And then the second flight on versus the Lexington was the leftover guys from the Shoho. So there's only 1 step there. Yes. And I got 1 more hit there.
And then what is the third die roll?
And then the third die is 6 steps of air against the Yorktown.
Okay. And that's die rolls coming.
Yep. And it's a 0. So I think it's a success.
Oh, wait a minute. Now we got something happening here. Okay. Well, first off, a 6-0 is by itself going to cause 4 hits. Yeah, I'm just checking. 4-0. That's 4 hits on the Yorktown.
Mm-hmm.
And and now you get to roll. The critical hit is you got to roll high now. 7,
Yes.
8, or 9. Roll again.
One.
All right.
So that's just a 1. So that's, I think, no extra hits.
Yeah. Now, but the big problem. So for the Allies, the 4 hits on the Yorktown knocked out all but one step of it. Your air units are devastated. You know, they got hit like on. You know, you lost a lot of planes. And this is a 3. So effectively, I think this at least the American carrier force has been wrecked here. And what a great place to end the scenario. And then we go 2 more days. You know, we go through all that. And oh wait, we got flak. Let's just roll 1 die, Fred. You might hit something.
Yeah, just 1.
Yep.
No, roll the 9. Nothing happened.
Okay, so this was a total bust for the Allies, a total glorious victory for the Japanese Navy, and the planes fly home, and we're at day 10 of 21. So there's 11 time increments or 11 hexes of movement left. Now, the Japanese. So let me just kind of give a post-mortem of what I think has just happened. I think we would reset anyway, but because Gary sent all of his invasion fleet directly to Guadalcanal first, he used up, like, in other words, he treated it like, I'm going to take this one and then I'm going to take that one. But the time remaining, if he were to go for Moresby, right, with 11, he'd have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He might just be able to pull it off. In other words, it's just enough time for him to run to Port Moresby with an invasion fleet, try to take the hex. Maybe he takes it, maybe he doesn't, and he has just enough movement to get back to a ball.
Yeah, but if there's even 1 day of delay there, then I am potentially hosed.
Right.
So,
well, you'd have to be very careful. This is where you got to be careful. Again, this is that skill you learned in kindergarten really comes in handy. The counting on your hands thing will become important at this point. But with the bashing of the American carriers, effectively, Fred doesn't have much of a. You've got a couple of cruisers sitting in Moresby, but that's not going to do much against Japanese carriers bombing the hell out of them. So this is going to be a Japanese victory of some kind already, I'm pretty sure. But he would hunt down. He'll send his heavy carriers after you and get one more strike on you at some point. Actually, no, he might get away because we're going into that's the lighting conditions. We're going to go into dust. So I would say that Gary would launch 1 dust strike in a hope of going back to Joe Dewhurst's comment. I think I lost that bubble at that time. The answer is there's almost never. It's not a viable strategy. You're just going to lose ships. And again, if you're in the campaign scenario or in the strategic scenario, losing ships is always a loser. The best way that you get crippled things is there are submarines. And that, in other words, we're not playing with submarines. That's a campaign thing mostly. Submarines are a big deal, and that's really where the cripples get gotten. So you wouldn't have to do that. But in this battle scenario, it's a useless strategy.
But we have around 10 minutes left. My question would be, what do we want to do for episode 2? Do we think we should continue this one, or you think it's more or less a done deal?
I would reset. I mean, I think you've learned that. I would reset because I think that you already lost.
So regardless of what the victory conditions turn out to look like, this is getting telegrammed to Tokyo as a massive Japanese success. So
good to know.
Yeah.
And the question is, should we play another one of those?
Well, I think that what I would do is see. This is where people make a mistake. I would play this scenario that you actually know what's going on. See that now would be interesting. It'd be an interesting game now because now you've been through. You see what can happen, what the choices are. I would play this exact one again. That's what a lot of people don't do. Is they play it once. They go, it was a lousy scenario. Well, you played it once. I mean, what do you know? You don't know anything. So. Now that you understand the basics, I would play this one again and see now how it really comes out.
Yeah, because now you kind of have, having played it a couple of times or once at least, you'll kind of see start to see the geometry of, here's where the bases are, here's where the forces start, here's where the objectives are, here's where the other teams' bases are, and have some sense of what they have to do. So in this case, the Japanese have to run in to either Guadalcanal or Port Moresby or both. You see that's going to happen. You can get I mean, they don't have complete freedom because there's a limited amount of time. They don't have complete freedom to choose whatever route they want just for the sake of avoiding you. So you can move to intercept them. The stopping the contact phase at the time that you stopped it was the right move because you stopped them short of Guadalcanal, right? You could still potentially catch those transports at sea at that point.
Yeah. Okay, but that's good to know. I think I would definitely like to play it again, but maybe we shouldn't do as episode 2 playing maybe the same scenario. I think it would be nice if I actually play it outside of the series itself, so people could see something different. So I would just make a call right now to the audience. If someone wants to replay that scenario with me, just reach out. And Gary, that works for you too. If you want to,
oh yeah, totally.
If you want to play with me, but I would be actually keen on playing it maybe once or twice, maybe once again as the US, as the Allies, and maybe once actually as the Japanese, to see it on the other side, just to see what kind of decisions I'm making also on the...
You'll find that to be a very valuable experience to play it from both sides.
Yeah. And by the way, I would ask Fred, if you could put into the, when you post it on YouTube from the stream, I did a very extensive video of the Watchtower campaign scenario. And I think I do a lot of... Stick the link there, because that's really where, in a short period of time, but I go through activation and all that in some detail. I think that that's going to be useful. And again, we could play a campaign scenario, or we could play, another battle scenario. There's a lot of good battle scenarios in this.
But yeah, I think that I would like to play this one maybe a couple of times offline, just for this, and then for episode 2 maybe play another battle, and then after episode 2, depending on what's the reception, we could go and aim for a campaign that we could play in a couple of episodes. Something like that.
I'd be up for that.
And also the other thing is, if anybody has the game, the Guadalcanal campaign is played out as the comprehensive example of play. So now that you've seen and heard it, looking at that now, I think, like I said, you saw how quickly things moved once you got through it's really not that complex. And that's really what the engagement scenarios are, just about teaching you that battle cycle in pieces. And as Gary said, once you kind of, at some point, you're just better off playing a battle scenario and seeing it all. This is really about the battle cycle, is the battle scenario, the battle cycle. The campaign game is going to layer in a lot of interesting decisions that are about, reinforcements and replacements and all this kind of stuff. And there's a lot of choices there, but if you don't have the battle cycle stuff down, you'll feel overwhelmed by this stuff.
Okay, but that sounds like a good plan. So what do you think you would recommend as a good second battle for?
A good second battle. I would say Santa Cruz is fun. That's the battle scenario 5. Eastern Solomons. Yeah. Naval battle, any of the 3 naval battle of the Guadalcanal, the battle scenarios 4, 5, or 6. Midway is a fairly intense battle scenario. It's not fast. It's got a lot of pieces.
And Leyte Gulf is enormous.
Oh yeah.
And then I would say maybe let's figure out a moment for episode 2 next month, so we could do one each month, something like this. We will be on Ardwulf's Lair for episode 2, then episode 3 back here. Episode 4 back on Homoliden. So another battle we'll do. In the meantime, it gives me amounts to practice a bit more, and I will give some updates regularly on Twitter and stuff like this. So you're going to be aware of my progress. And we come back for episode 2.
Of course, we have to salute Gary for his glorious airstrike.
Yeah, amazing.
That's true.
Amazing skills.
That is an uncharacteristic good die rolling at exactly the right time.
Yeah, I was about to say it was a bit deceiving because you actually painted it as if you were a notoriously bad dice roller, and I was really impressed with your dice rolling skill.
You mean you make me do it in public, and this is what happens? I mean,
now it's for history.
I am a laughably bad die roller.
Wait. I just want to bring up one point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It was 2 more days. So one rule, it's not a big important thing. So Gary, I just looked. Gary put 4 hits on the Yorktown.
Yeah.
And the Yorktown's hit thing is 5, so it doesn't sink.
Yeah.
But it's got a C on it. So you crippled the Yorktown. That's important. Mm-hmm. So the Yorktown only goes 1 hex per turn during battle cycles now. Well, not 2.
So Gary's gonna be able to catch up on him, actually.
Well, that's more important. Is it just so happens you're exactly 9 hexes away from but you've only got 1, 2, 3, 4. So the Lexington, the Yorktown isn't going to make. Remember, you said like,
Yeah.
the Yorktown's not going to make it home in time. It'll be a victory condition. He got it.
But I could send it. Couldn't I just send it to Port Moresby then?
You could.
It's
that's
4
your only,
hexes away.
and that is your only hope. But
Yeah.
if it captures Port Moresby, same problem.
Yeah, of course. Excellent. But that
and
was
also,
great.
by the way, if it goes to Port Moresby, it's within range of lots of aircraft. He's going to keep bombing it. So I'm guessing the Yorktown is lost. That's
and in fact, the next move here was going to be for me to bomb Port Moresby with some of the TAC air that's available.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. But I think that was awesome. So we thank everyone for being here. And Alan ordered the game. So sorry, Alan.
Very good.
But I think
apologize to your wallet.
Yes, but you should thank us for your brain and heart. You're going to have a lot of fun. We should be there next month for another episode of Learning Pacific War. I would say follow Gary and I on Twitter just to be sure that you get an update when we're going to announce the date for episode 2. Thanks for everyone being here. Thanks again, Gary, for doing the series with me and helping me through that whole process. And thanks, Mark, for doing the whole rules teach and taking the time to walk me through that big game that I'm excited to explore with the two of you. Thanks again, and have a great rest of the day. See you soon.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.